Welcome to Behind the Doors, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of residential real estate investing. I'm your host, Dan Noma Jr., here with my co-host, Marvin Cruz.
We're here to help you unlock the best strategies and practice for investors. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro looking to scale your portfolio.
We've spent decades navigating the ever-changing world of real estate, and now we're sharing everything we've learned to help you succeed.
From off-market deals to cash flow management and everything in between, we'll break it down and bring you actionable insights that can make a real difference in your investments.
So get ready to open the door to new opportunities and take your real estate investing to the next level. Let's dive in. All right, Donovan Reese with MyRentDoor. I appreciate you being here, man. Again, Marvin's out, but we got a fresh face in the seat. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. My pleasure.
So part two, for our first episode, we talked a lot about, how to select the right property manager. And that was really kind of the emphasis of that one. But I think in this one, I want to start out with how do you select the right tenant for your property? And, so if you're a landlord working with a property manager, or you're a landlord on your own, you get an application. What am I looking for? Where does it start? And what is even the process by which I can educate myself enough to make an educated decision about that tenant?
I might have a differing opinion on this than most people do, but I think there's a lot of noise, around that. And there's a lot of things that have been kind of the standard that I don't think are really all that helpful. So we run full background checks on all of them: credit, criminal, eviction. We're actually moving to a new company right now that they send people to the courthouse. Everyone pull every record of every address associated with them for the last 7 years. So we get a lot of information through that. Obviously we don't like to see evictions. Bankruptcies, I actually don't have a problem with people with recent bankruptcies. If you've ever managed a property or owned a property when the renter declared bankruptcy and looped you in on that bankruptcy, it is awful. It is absolutely horrible. So if they've had a recent bankruptcy, they can't for another 7 years. So a lot of them are, they've got all their debts settled, and are a lot of times now have cash too. So bankruptcies don't, on the surface, scare me. And you want to dig in, see what happened and how they got there, and and what they're doing to get out of it, and moving forward. So the big thing though is credit scores, right? Everyone's like, oh, they got to have a 700 credit score. I'm like, if they had a 700 credit score, they'd be buying.
Right.
And so I think credit scores are silly to begin with, and they're starting to do some stuff around that that's better. I think we just saw something that they're going to eliminate medical debt from credit scores.
Yeah.
And, some of these companies now have more of kind of a renter score as opposed to just your typical, scores. So I don't really put a lot of stock in credit scores. If it's low, again, I want to know why, what happened, and what they're doing to get out of it. Sometimes they just don't have credit. Am I going to ding somebody for being fiscally responsible and not racking up credit card bills? No.
Right.
And I always joke, do I care if they pay their credit cards? No, not my problem.
Right.
Not my monkey, not my circus.
Right.
So, I want to look at, do they pay their rent? So obviously any negatives around that, I look for utility payment issues. If they've got a judgment from, say SRP or something, anything housing related. But when you think about it, I mean, it's your home, it's shelter. It's one of the basic needs that you have. And so typically, when renters fall on hard times, they're going to figure out how to pay their rent first, right? Before their credit card and before all of that. So I want to make sure they take care of that. And so that's big. The biggest thing is validating, verifying income. And there's, ways to do that, get check stubs and bank statements and go through all that. The biggest thing you can do is landlord verifications. And the key to that is obviously call the current landlord, talk to them. But the key, if you do anything, call their previous landlord, right? So I tell the story all the time. I was training an agent out on the west side here, and had this couple come to us, and and seemed fine, seemed good, and so we called the current landlord, and gave raving reviews, and so, oh great, sounds good, let's call the previous landlord. And these guys actually gave us that information, which they shouldn't have, because we called this sweet old lady, and as soon as the name came out of my mouth, she just broke down crying.
Oh no.
So apparently they had got evicted, and the night before they moved out, they had a Sharpie party, which I just learned is, you know, coloring all the walls with Sharpie.
Looks like my kid's room.
Right.
Yeah.
So, as much as all of us landlords, say we're all on the same team here and, fighting the renter or whatever, that's not always true. When you've got a problematic tenant, and someone actually calls and does a rental verification, if you want them out of your house, you're not going to be honest with that person, right? Because if you are and you go, they're terrible and they're jerks and they don't pay and they damage it, like, you're not going to take that renter.
Right.
So, you see it all the time. I mean, people are just trying to get the pain away from them, and at that point, it's everyone on their own there. So, I prefer, my favorite thing is the landlord verification. So on that too, you'll see a lot of times where it's clearly not the landlord. So one thing I do is I check the tax records to verify that the names match, or the property manager, or whoever it is. And sometimes if I have concerns where I think it's maybe their friend or their cousin who's acting as their landlord, and I'll call them and say it's a 4-bed 3-bath. And I'll go, oh yeah, this this is a huge house, 6 bedrooms. And I go, oh yeah. And I'm like, you're not the landlord.
Right.
So you definitely got to be careful. That's kind of the challenge, around that, and why, quite frankly, that probably of all the things gets done the least when doing verifications for most companies, just because it's a pain. And now, with a lot of the bigger companies too, there's all this documentation you have to file to release information, and so honestly, it gets skipped a lot. But it is the most important thing. But you also have to verify that the person you're talking to is actually the landlord.
I would have never. I mean, I don't know. I just have never thought about that. So yeah, probably a bunch of the people I called to verify rents were just like their friend.
Oh yeah, I mean, it happens all the time, all the time.
Sneaky.
But I had one the other.
Sneaky people.
I had one the other day, coming from a well-known build to rent company here, and I know them personally because I do some work with them as well on a different project. But it was the landlord email was, we'll call it ABC Realty at yahoo.com. I'm like, this is a multi-million dollar company. They're not using Yahoo.
Yeah, this is not the landlord.
Yeah. No.
Wow.
So
landlord verification is your number one tool. So it's not credit. It's not really even the background check. It's really coming down to like, does this person pay rent or not? And that's where you start.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people, I mean, they get calls all the time, what's your criteria, and I say I have three criteria. Can you pay the rent? Do you have a history of paying the rent? Will you maintain the home? And can we get along?
Yeah.
If we can have good professional relationship and based on, mutual respect and open communication, we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
The rest of it to me is noise, but
you
certainly want to make sure that, you're looking at, the standard is, 3 times, rent, for income. And that's, had to come down just because of, the affordability issues we've talked about. But you do want to verify that not only, for your own sake to make sure that they can pay you, but I also don't want to put anybody in a bad spot where, it's just obvious that it's not going to be a lasting thing. In 3 months, 6 months down the road, we're going to have to kick them out or evict them because they can't. So
you're dealing with it again. Yeah.
You want to make sure that the income's there, and,
check the job. What about, I mean, I know you said bankruptcy wasn't a big deal to you, and I'd never heard that perspective before, that basically like it's the war's already over. So at that point, they're it's like a new person at that point. So yeah, they've got a blemish on their credit. Yeah, they've got this bankruptcy that's sitting out there, but the reality is now all of their debts are settled, and life goes on beyond that. What about one that I hear a lot is like felonies? How do you look at felonies?
I mean, I want to look at what it is, right? What happened again? I like to get the whole story here. So, I don't have a blanket denial on felonies. Again, if it's recent or if there's a history of them, um, that's certainly a reason for disqualification. But even sometimes drug ones, it's you know you got caught.
Right.
I mean, like and you're 18 years old or
Yeah.
whatever. And again, I'm not. I mean, while they say past behavior is indicative of future behavior or whatever, not always. So I give renters a lot more chances than most people do. Um, but again, how we manage that relationship and we appreciate them and we treat them like people and we help them out with whatever they need. And so those are some of my most loyal renters and
Yeah.
they love us. And
Yeah.
so they make sure that like they take it on themselves, a lot of them to, you know, to protect the property and to look out for our best interest. And so, especially with those ones, when you can set up a genuine relationship on mutual trust, and they're just not used to that, right? So,
Yeah.
they're used to being, belittled and, by other property managers and all renters are the worst. And so when they find a relationship like, what we've developed at MyRentDoor, they're appreciative of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a guy who just got out of prison for murder. He was in there for 18 years. Came out. Guy's awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
He's got a job.
Yeah. Oh, he hustles.
He's
And
reformed, but
yeah.
probably learned his lesson. You
I
can't.
mean, he was, I got the whole story, right? I mean, he was
Yeah.
in the wrong place, wrong time, and, a drug deal got bad. And, so, I mean, again, I'm not like obviously condoning any of that, but I really look at the person first, so I'll, while we do, almost entirely, self-guided tours, so I don't meet the renters at the property every time for a showing, but we'll spend a lot of time just talking to them,
Yeah.
asking questions, seeing how they react, how they interact, and how they respond to things. And and like I said, I'm willing to take chances on good people.
Yeah.
And it's because of that too. We've got, I'd say almost a third of all of our leases come from our new renters come from existing renter referrals.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How do you deal with like situations where maybe it's like cohabitants, people that are friends and they're applying to rent one place? Is that a challenge for you guys, or should landlords be concerned about that? Because what I've heard in the past is people would say, well, I don't want to get involved with two people, two applications on the same house because they're going to split the rent or whatever. Because what if one of them they get mad at each other or they have one of these relationship issues or they don't want to live together anymore? Now I'm the landlord and I'm in the middle of this relationship. Do you think that's a big deal, or should people be worried about that?
I mean, it's always something to be, to consider, but you look at, couples getting together and cohabitating for the first time together. That would concern me more than friends getting together, quite frankly.
Probably is related to the divorce rate in this country, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But if you've never lived, you've been dating for 3 months, 6 months, and now you're going to live together and you haven't lived together.
Right.
That I think that's where you see it, more often. But, it doesn't bother me at all. Not at all. We'll take the, combined income of, make sure that they qualify. But, if I can take it off a little bit off track. So I have a very different philosophy and about leases and long-term leases and renters, if it was up to me, all of my leases would be one page and month to month. I would put everybody on a month to month lease right off the bat. I actually tried to do that. It turns out the renters pushed back harder than my clients did. But what people don't realize is, especially with long-term leases, they don't benefit the landlord. It's a false sense of security. It benefits the renter a lot more, and it really hamstrings you as the landlord, right? So if a renter's going to leave, they lose their job or they get transferred or divorced or whatever, like they're going to leave,
Yeah.
right? And so people are like, well, I'll just take them to court. Well, let's walk through that, right? You have all your court filing fees, attorney's fees, you know, non-payment of rent, vacancy,
Yeah.
turn costs, like, and then what? You win, right? You get a judgment, take that to the bank, right? You're not getting anything out of it. So, one of the reasons, as I kind of worked through to build a model that I was inspired and passionate about was, and why I don't have a leasing fee anymore, is because if a renter needs to leave, I'm not going to be that one in the doorway here preventing them from leaving. I'm going to be there helping them pack their bags. So I don't care. I mean, if it's mid lease, because if they're it behooves nobody to drag this out, right? So the sooner they tell you about it, and then you just get to work, start marketing it. So we have a lease break fee in our lease, which is equivalent to 2 months rent. But I've had a few instances here, and I this house I leased out in Queen Creek, and really nice girl. She moved in about Thanksgiving, and then about the 1st of March last year, she called me and said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity to take a job or transfer it to Texas, and it's an amazing opportunity, but I can't break my lease. I don't know what to do. I'm not sure if I should take it." And I was like, "Hey, congratulations on the opportunity. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
You have 3 options here. I'm here to work with you. So you can pick any option you want. One, you can stay and pay the rest of the lease. Two, you can pay the lease break fee. Or three, you can let me put the house on the market right away, and I'll start showing it, make it available for me. Obviously, it's in your best interest to do that. And as soon as I get somebody else to take over the lease, and it's a new 12-month lease, then
Yeah.
I'll release you from the lease." So
Right.
she said, "Great." So I put the house, and it was a nice house, clean house, it was rented well. So I put it on the market. Next day, I had 2 showings. One of them applied. We accepted them, and they moved in. My renter moved out Thursday night. We did the move out inspection. The house was clean and perfect shape. She got her security deposit back, and Friday morning I
Brilliant.
moved new renters in. So
Yeah.
it's about being proactive on those, and and working through the renters with the renters on this. And that's again why I call them renter partners, because doing that proactive work, what a lot of property managers and landlords don't realize is, like, you're doing work regardless.
Yeah.
Right. So everyone's going, "Oh, I'll just wait and wait." Well, now you're doing reactive work. Right. And
They're
nobody
probably more
wins then.
likely to like damage the unit on the way out, like all of those things
Right.
because they're upset. It's like, yeah, just be kind to people and you'd be shocked at how well they treat you on the other side of it.
Oh yeah, and I help them out because again, my goal is zero vacancy. So when I can tell my clients, "Hey, this is what we're doing. Don't worry. There's no interruption to your rent. We've got a new one." Like, fantastic, right? Because
Yeah.
as a landlord, what do you care about? Vacancy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
That's
don't.
great.
I'm not a big fan of long term leases. And
Interesting. Yeah. I never heard it. You always have some interesting perspective just due to sheer volume. So, well, let's have a little fun. I've got, I think that answers, how to select a tenant pretty well. But I think what, could be worth our listeners' ears is like, give me your worst landlord story. And then I'm going to ask you later for your worst tenant story. And then I think we should figure out who's actually worse, the landlords, or the tenants that you've dealt with. Um, as far as these stories go, because I think in general, probably people are generally good, but there's got to be some stories out there of like your worst landlord experience. Like, who was the worst landlord you dealt with, and what did they do?
The land, it's hard to think of the absolute worst. I've got a recent one that's it was pretty fun. A portfolio in Birmingham, Alabama, and this couple had been helping I don't know, other people buy properties, and none of them lived in Alabama, of course, so they're all over the country. And this couple was supposed to be managing the renovations and everything, and literally just bankrupted everybody. Just brutal. Though we've been taking over a lot of the other people, and they're great, but this couple, like, they came to me, and obviously we're in a lot of pain, and they had about 30 houses, and I don't know, probably 26 vacancies,
Oh wow.
and 2 evictions, and 2 late payers. I mean, it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And they were they live in LA, right? And so they were trying to self-manage remotely, and so they were, paying the handyman to do stuff, and the handyman ended up moving into a house, and now we're evicting the handyman. But they came to us and they're like, "Oh, we just want to be hands off. We're, you guys run it. We trust you. You obviously have experience, and so just call us if it's on fire." Great, that's my kind of client.
Yeah.
And it's what we do. We solve problems and handle it. So, but from day one, they were just in our business, and just it didn't matter how much it cost to do something. It was never cheap enough.
Yeah.
And so then they started coordinating their own maintenance, which was a disaster. And I mean, we had a couple, this lady and her mom, and the lady, I mean, was probably in her 60s, and so mom's 80, 90 years old, and the plumbing kept backing up, and so we sent, and it was a septic, I believe. It kept backing up, so we sent a company out there, snaked the line. It worked for like a day, and then, but there was an issue that needed to be fixed, and it was not going to be cheap. It was like, I don't remember, $2,000 or something to
Yeah.
do
Like a
this.
sewer line or something.
Yeah. And they would not fix it. And so my renters, they couldn't use the bathroom. They couldn't use any water, and it sinks nothing. And instead of fixing the problem or putting them up in a hotel, they had a biffy delivered. And my 60-year-old renter and her 90-year-old mom had to go use the biffy in their front yard every time they had to go to the bathroom.
Oh my God.
For like 2 weeks.
Oh, that's a good one. That is a bad landlord. That is a bad landlord move.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and that's just one. I could go on all day. And if you guys are out there, I hope you're listening. So we ended up parting ways because just, there was just no way to win together. And so then after that, then they came back and accused us of not taking care of their renters, and how, all these issues were out there and we never handled them. And I'm like, you never handled them. And
Right.
So,
yeah. Including giving them a porta-john
yeah,
in their front yard. That's unbelievable.
in the middle of the summer in Alabama.
Oh my gosh. That's bad. That is bad. All right. What about tenants? Like, give me your word. Like, can you pick one? Or there's got to be a few. What was the worst tenant story? I've got one too, but I'll share mine after you share yours.
I don't know if this is necessarily the worst renter I ever had, but it's one of the craziest stories. When we started Renter's Warehouse, like one of the first properties I ever managed was half a duplex in Apache Junction, and for this lady in Oklahoma. And so she'd been self-managing it. And so there was a guy named Mario on one side, and then the other side was vacant. So I took over the vacant side, and Mario was still there. So I didn't manage Mario's side. But what had happened was it was Mario's ex-wife who lived in the one side, and she finally moved out. And so there was this whole weird thing anyways. And so I end up finding these renters. And again, it's a duplex in Apache Junction in 2009. And so the husband was like 60, the wife was like 27, and they were on their third marriage to each other. They married to each other 3 different times. And interesting folks. And so soon as they get over there, move in, Michael was my renter. Michael and Mario became like best friends. They were hanging out all the time. And in fact, they shared the same garbage can to cut costs. And something went down one day. I still don't exactly know, but all of a sudden, Michael and Mario are not friends anymore.
Yeah.
And so they are going after each other. And I'm now adult babysitting here, and so I mean, I'd get phone calls and I had a recorded voicemail from Michael saying, "I caught Mario putting his trash in my trash can. The next time I see that, I'm going to blow the back of his head off." I'm like, dude, you can't say that on the voicemail.
Right.
But it just ended up like crazy stuff. And I had the cops there twice a week. And I mean, it was. So then one day, Michael, this actually pretty funny. He calls me one day telling me that Mario broke into his house. couldn't tell, either took the window out or crawled through the attic. And the reason he found out was, this is so dumb, was because he had his wife get his hair trimmers to trim his back hair. And it started pulling out all of his back hair, and he realized it was an old hair trimmer, and he had a new one, and this one was like 13 years old. And so he accused Mario of coming in and stealing and swapping out his back hair trimmer. And so,
and you as the property manager are listening to this story.
I have to they're threatening to kill each other. I mean, it was just wild. And so I didn't manage the Mario side, just Michael, but I had to deal with both sides of it. And, my client in Oklahoma is getting calls now and everything. And so Michael then calls me one day and he's like, "Oh, my wife left me again." I'm like, shocked. He's like, "I can't afford the rent on my own." I'm like, "How about you just move out?
Yeah.
We'll find somebody else for you. We'll find someone else. It'll be fine. Just go."
Yeah.
So I go out, I move him out, and I'm talking to Mario, sorry. A couple days after Michael moved out, and I'm like, "Hey, sorry, it didn't work out. We'll try to find you a better neighbor, get along and, whatever." And, great. Because I thought he was the good renter, paid rent early to the landlord and everything. And so then that was like a Thursday. And then following Monday was Memorial Day. Yeah, it was Memorial Day of 2009, and I'm moving in some new tenants in a house in like Southeast Mesa down there, and I get a call from, my client had called me then. So this was a week later. So it was Thursday, and then a week from Monday. And so in that time, my client calls me and says, "Hey, have you talked to Mario?" I was like, "Yeah, I just talked to him the other day when I was there." I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "I got a weird call from the neighbor. Can't really figure it out." And I'm like, "All right, well, I'm sending my cleaner over there on Monday. I'll have her check in on it." So I'm moving this other couple into this other house. I get a call from my cleaner. She's like, "Hey, you looking for Mario?" I'm like, "Yeah, did you find him?" She's like, "Not exactly." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Mario's dead." I'm like, "Do you know what happened?" She's like, "All I know is someone blew the back of his head off." And instantly, and I have voicemails of Michael saying he's going to blow. And it was a couple days after he'd moved out. And I think he was living in an RV somewhere. I'm like, I got to go. One of my renters just killed one of my other renters. I'll be back.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty bad one.
Well, I hauled up there, and so I get up there, and there's just some random dude in the unit. And I walk up, and I'm like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I'm Mario's friend from Chicago." All right. I'm like, "Where's Mario?" "Mario's dead." I'm like, "Yeah, I get that. What happened?" "Got the back of his head blown off." "I get that. What happened?" And he wouldn't tell me. And so I'm like, "Was it Michael?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "Whew. Well, at least that's good. It wasn't my renter." But then the other neighbor comes across the street, and he's talking to this other guy, and I'm like trying to follow him and listen to him. And they go onto his yard, and I just follow him onto the yard. And the guy turns around and goes, "You step on my yard, I'll blow the back of your head off." I'm like, "I guess I'll stand in the street then."
Yeah.
So I ended up being like was friend. I mean, it was just a crazy thing, but turned out the Mario was a drug dealer, and he had bought some bad weed from a Mexican and went back and tried to get his money back, and they got into a fight in this mobile home in Apache Junction, Mesa border, and the guy shot him and then lit the mobile home on fire.
Wow.
That was like maybe the third renter I ever had.
Michael and Mario.
Michael.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, mine is probably not as it doesn't end in death, that's for sure. But I did have a situation where I rented one of my own units to somebody, and this person on the surface seemed like amazing. In fact, he paid me for rent a year in advance. So he gives me one check for, and the rent wasn't cheap. Like, it was an expensive unit, and he paid me a year in advance. And I said, "Wow, this is amazing." So the first year goes by. I don't hear from him at all, right? Not one maintenance call, not one call. Obviously, I'm not calling about late rent because I've already collected it all. And I don't hear from him. So the lease is probably 90 days from expiration. I call him, hey, what's going on? Did you want to stay? Like, we're going to have to do something, figure it out. He wires me another year's worth of rent. This goes on for 4 years, right? Where he's just paying me in advance for rent. But I started thinking to myself, I'm like, I haven't been to the house now in almost 5 years. Like, I've not been to the property at all. I've not had one maintenance request. I haven't heard from this guy. I wonder if I should just like check in and see what's going on. So I look in the lease, and of course I've got a clause in there where I can do an inspection. And so I just said, hey, I'm going to come by and do an inspection. He immediately like gets super defensive and tells me like, he's like, listen, I paid you in advance. I pay all the utilities. I do all these things. Like, you don't need to come over. I've got everything. Like, it's fine. And, I said, well, I just feel weird that I haven't seen my property in like 5 years. And so it's just important to me that I walk in and make sure that it's being maintained, and that's really all I want to do. Make a long story short, we battle over when, a month or so goes by before he actually lets me in. I get over to the property, and what I find is, he now comes clean as soon as I walk in the door. And he explains to me that, it was like a tri-level townhome and you walked into the second level. So there was almost like a basement to the townhome. He said, he's like, look, I know that you've been trying to get in here and maybe you think something's wrong. And I said, no, honestly, I don't. I just need to check the maintenance in this place. And the place is like immaculate, just like I left it, right? Upstairs, but there's no furniture in it. And I'm like, I said, so like, do you actually live here? Like, what's going on? And he goes, no. And so he takes me downstairs and shows me the entire like third floor was filled with marijuana plants.
Uh-huh.
And he had a grow facility going on in my unit for almost 5 years before I came and inspected it. So that was my tough landlord experience. So
I've had a few grow houses. The worst ones I've had a couple actually. They were making meth in the house. One actually didn't blow up the house, but they got it outside in the front yard. They blew the tree up.
oh gosh,
So I found out about it after the fact, and they were long gone. But yeah, I got a lot of stories.
maybe we should do an entire podcast on just stories, But look, I don't think it's a real estate investment problem. This is obviously a podcast to promote real estate investment. And for people to get wealth, I think it is humans. Humans are just different in some cases, right? And it just happens to be that they live in your house, and that's how these stories come to be. But they are funny to talk about.
Yeah, some of them are.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them still make me want to cry sometimes.
Right.
But I mean, that's the risk you take in this. But by putting a good product on the market, treating them well, I mean, you're going to attract higher caliber renters that appreciate that. So we do a lot with our renters as well as like rent reporting, and we've got some financial coaching products coming out to help them. So it's about finding the right people, and I don't. Not to say that I don't have some bad renters. We run into problems, and I do a lot when I take over properties, but we don't really have issues with our renters or late payment because of the way we run the relationship. So if you're a jerk and if you have a crappy product on the market, that's who you're going to attract. So, a lot of these landlords, complain about it, but I'm like, you're the ones to blame.
Yeah.
You put a subpar product on the market and you're going to get a subpar tenant.
I love it. Keep your units clean, folks. Keep your investments tight. Donovan, I appreciate you coming in and doing the series with me, man. This has been fun. We'll have to have you back again because I think we scratched the surface on like 2 of 100 topics that we could talk about. And property management is a really good one. So we'll definitely have you back, man. And thanks for coming out and joining us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Doors. We hope you found today's insights valuable for your real estate investing journey.
Remember, real estate success doesn't happen overnight, but with the right tools and strategies, you can build long-term wealth and create passive income.
If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with others who are passionate about real estate investing.
Don't forget to follow us on social media for more tips and exclusive content.
Until next time, keep unlocking new opportunities, and we'll see you on the next episode of Behind the Doors.